whether you're a person of faith or not, if you're watching carefully and you're not seeing the hand of God or some supernatural powers at play, then I think you're not watching fully. You're not, comprehending fully what's going on.
He wasn't just an eyewitness to history, he was an active participant in it. David Friedman was the first U.S. ambassador to serve at the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, and he helped spearhead the Abraham Accords. All of that happened during President Trump's first term. Now that he's back in office, what can we expect in the next 4 years, in particular in the Middle East? Ambassador Friedman joins us now. He's also the author of the bestseller, One Jewish State, The Last Best Hope to Resolve the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. Ambassador, always great to see you. Hey, I think a good place to start in a very busy season in the Middle East is with the hostages. We've got 4 more set to be released tomorrow. What's your sense, David, overall of this deal? Not perfect, of course, but is this pretty much the best that Israel could do right now to get the hostages out?
Yeah, thanks, Eric, for having me. Always great to be with you. And I think regrettably it is, in part because this deal was fully baked in May already, meaning it had already been negotiated. Israel had already agreed to accept it. And then the last minute, Hamas backed out. So now fast forward to now, Trump comes in. Hamas wants to see if they can, turn a page, or maybe they're petrified, whatever the reason, they go back to it. But the math, the percentages were unfortunately already baked. And look, I find myself responding to this. I've been asked about this a lot. I say something which is somewhat incomprehensible, even though I'm saying it, which is that I support the deal, but I hate the deal.
Yeah.
I support the deal because anything which ends the nightmare of these poor people who've been living, in subhuman conditions for so long, anything that ends the nightmare, obviously it's important to do. But, let's face it, just in the first round, 3 victims of Hamas terror were exchanged for 90 terrorists, right? I mean, this is unthinkable as a transaction, but it's the value that Israel places on every human life. It's both the strength and the weakness of the state of Israel.
David, do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu, in considering this deal, which again, as you just laid out, is far from perfect, do you think the fact that President Trump is back in office gave Bibi a little more leeway perhaps to agree to this because he has a trust in President Trump and President Trump's support for Israel and follow through if and when Hamas collapses the deal?
Yeah, look, it was the key factor for sure. And I think in particular, you touched upon it just now. Look, phase 1 does not require Israel to end the war, right? And so phase 1 is in essence, Israel pays its price in terms of releasing criminals, and it's a very high price to pay. One of the murderers of one of my friends, Ari Fuld, is being released. I mean, it's painful. It's painful for everybody in the country, but they're getting hostages back. Now, in phase 2, Israel has to agree with Hamas as to ending the war, and that's a much deeper challenge. Unless Hamas surrenders and agrees to leave, I don't see that happening. And what's different now than before is the Trump administration has said to Netanyahu, look, we're not expecting you to keep Hamas in power. We're not expecting you to accept anything short of their surrender. And if you don't get it, go back in and do what you got to do.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of deals, David, President Trump hinted yesterday, talking about Iran and Iran's nuclear program, that, look, he said, I'd love to avoid military action if possible against Iran. President Trump is the deal maker, of course. Is there any possibility of an actually good Iran nuclear deal, not like the madness that we saw under Obama and Biden, or has that train left the station and all that's left is military action?
Look, if the Iranians, went to Trump and said, look, we saw what Israel did to us just in the last, few months. They've humiliated us. They've shown that they can attack us anytime they want. And obviously, if Israel can do it, America can do it, 10 times over with America's incredible military might. So if Iran says, look, we're giving up our nukes. It's not going to work. It's not sustainable. And you, the United States, can come in and inspect anywhere you want. You can come into our military bases. You can go everywhere. Nothing, open kimono, as they say. No, full transparency. Nothing to hide. In that unlikely event, yeah, there's a good deal that can be made, but it will only happen, I believe, if Iran believes that they have no choice.
Ambassador, I think of the Abraham Accords and how close it seemed to be to normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Then the Biden administration took office, but now President Trump is back, and he's made very clear that he'd like to pursue that once again, normalization between the Saudis and Israel. Number one, do you think it's possible? And number two, how big of a game changer would that be?
Well, I think it's possible, and I think it'll be an enormous game changer. And the question is going to be, Eric, what's the price, right? It's the negotiations have been going on already for quite a while. And the question is, what's the price? If you look at the first Abraham Accord between the United States and the United Arab Emirates and Israel, I mean, that was just, the perfect template. It was peace for peace. It was basically all the countries getting together and saying, look, we're going to empower the moderates and we're going to defeat the extremists. And that was really the thesis of the Abraham Accords. Now, will the Saudis come in and do the same deal as the Emirates? Will they normalize with Israel, on basically an argument that it's time to put all this behind us? Maybe, and that would hopefully be the dominant motivation. But I think the back and forth, the give and take will be more complicated.
Yeah.
And the question is, what does it look like at the end? A good deal where Saudi normalizes with Israel under the motivation, under the auspices of America, could change the world, forever, at least for 100 years. I mean, it could be incredible.
Yeah.
And I think in President Trump, we've got the right guy to be in charge of this negotiation.
Yeah, David, it would seem that one of the sticking points for any potential deal would be if the Saudis kind of dug in their heels over the establishment of a Palestinian state. Now, your successor, our friend Mike Huckabee, said recently he thinks that's unlikely, a Palestinian state under President Trump. You've written the great new book, One Jewish State. What does one Jewish state mean? And in relation to a possible Palestinian state that the left and the elites have been pushing for years in the biblical heartland, by the way, of Judea and Samaria?
Well, the thesis of one Jewish state is, if you're looking for the win-win, if you're looking for a way to bring peace and prosperity to Judea and Samaria for Jews, for Israelis, for Palestinians, for Jews, for everyone else, the only country capable of really doing that is Israel, and the only way this can be achieved is under full Israeli sovereignty. And I would make the case to the Saudis. I would make the case to my colleagues here in America that the real way to empower the Palestinians is to do for the Palestinians what Israel's done for Israeli Arab citizens. Israeli Arabs have one of the best standards of living in the Middle East. That to me is the best outcome, Israeli sovereignty. And what I would say to your listeners, in addition, is, there's a cherry on top. The cherry on top is this also fulfills God's will. This is also consistent with God's covenants to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, consistent with the prophecies of Ezekiel, Jeremiah, of Isaiah. So, the bottom line is we shouldn't be surprised that fulfilling God's will would achieve the best outcome for all the inhabitants of Judea and Samaria. And I hope to make that case.
Seems like we're in a moment right now, and you mentioned it a little while ago, Iran's ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides, that's basically a smoldering heap of ruins right now. Iran's air defenses have been destroyed. President Trump is back in office. And you mentioned God, and you're a man of faith. Do you sense we're seeing something happen here, that we're in a moment right now where Israel can really benefit and blossom in this current climate?
Yeah, look. If whether you're a person of faith or not, if you're watching carefully and you're not seeing the hand of God or some supernatural powers at play, then I think you're not watching fully. You're not comprehending fully what's going on. From Trump's totally improbable election, his survival of this assassination attempt by a millimeter, by Israel's ability to completely decapitate Hezbollah, the beepers, the pagers, killing Hassan Nasrallah, who was unkillable, killing Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, in the most secure, dormitory in Tehran, flying into Iran and destroying their defenses, flying around like they could reach anywhere, anytime. The fact that Iran shot 300 ballistic missiles at Israel, 300 missiles. No one has ever before been the recipient of 300 ballistic missiles, within the course of an hour, and no Israeli was killed. I mean, something's happening here, and I think that is completely. You don't need to be a person of faith to see the hand of God here.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.